Hi everyone, we are on our second session of the day. For those of you who missed the first session, I'm Rachel, the online community manager for the Gypsy Nurse. I'll be hosting all week long. We'll be doing giveaways all week long as well. To be entered into the drawings, you need to comment or ask questions during the live sessions. We'll announce all the winners at the end of each session. If you missed this morning's session or yesterday's, we do have those on thegypsynurse.com. You can either find it on the site, the page that you're looking at now, or in the article section. We would like to thank Travel Nurse Across America for sponsoring this conference. Be sure to check out their agency profile and their jobs on thegypsynurse.com. So we have Steve here again to help kick off our second session.
Everybody's waving these days, right? Is that protocol? Everybody waves on these virtual calls.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rachel, and thrilled to be having the second day of the Gypsy Nurse virtual conference, and we're off to a great start. And I'm really excited about our next guest. It's somebody that I've known for a long time, longer than I care to say. I think, Karyn, I've known you since I was 15 or 16, something like that.
We were just kiddos.
We're just kids. Been a long time. But today we have with us Karyn Buxman. I'm so thrilled to have Karyn here. Karyn is an international speaker, a successful author, and a neurohumorist who is living at the intersection of the brain and humor. Karyn is a pioneer in the field of applied humor, starting with her master's thesis in graduate school, and now continues her partnerships with leading neuroscientists. Today, Karyn helps leaders and those they serve achieve peak performance and optimum health through the art and science of applied humor. And again, I'm thrilled to have Karyn Buxman here with us today. I have known Karyn for literally about 13 or 14 years, going back to some early nursing communities I was working at, and she's a wonderful person. Buckle yourselves in, everybody. You're going to laugh, you'll cry maybe, but it's going to be a fantastic session. And I do want to mention too, as we were mentioning earlier, Karyn is a very successful author, and we are giving away 3 of one of her most well-known books. It is What's So Funny About Nursing? A Creative Approach to Celebrating Your Profession. So 3 lucky winners will be receiving a copy of Karyn's book for free. Yes. But one thing we do ask, and that is please participate. These are meant to be participatory calls. We have a chat area. Karyn loves to hear from you. She wants to hear questions and comments and so forth. So in order to be entered to win one of the books, you must participate in the comments area. So with that said, welcome Karyn Buxman.
Thank you, Steve and Rachel. And if there's any tears, it's only going to be because of technical difficulty. One of my favorite phrases, a quote from Dr. Michael McGriff is, "Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape." So we're going to roll with that. And we're going to share the screen. This is the exciting part. There we go. Oops. And now, this is why we do this ahead of time, so that you guys can see. Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. All right, let's try this again. Share. And awesome. Now I think we're in business. And aha. Here we go. So what is so funny about COVID-19? And this is a program that is not strictly entertainment, because COVID-19 is no joke. I just looked up some of the stats this morning, and it's pretty sobering. Globally, currently we have about, at the time of this taping, 18.5 million cases, over 700,000 deaths globally. In the US, 4.8 million cases with 159,000 deaths. And nurses, there's been over 600 nurses who have passed away from COVID. So it is no joke, but it can be a laughing matter because of the benefits of humor. So let me give you just a little bit of background. One of the things that was not in my bio, but if you read anything about me or any of my works, you know that I am also a nurse. This is me back many years ago, and I had a very diverse nursing background. I started out in med surg. I quickly moved to surgery, ICU, ER. Then I moved to home health and took care of a number of patients in a large county in Missouri. I also taught nursing. I taught geriatrics, pediatrics, OB, psychiatric nursing. I also did some school nursing where I chased head lice on children's grades K through 12. And then I also did some air ambulance. And I know what some of you are thinking. She couldn't hold a job. But what really drew me to nursing is the diversity. And one of the things that really wasn't much of an option when I was a nurse was travel nursing. And I'm just very grateful for all of the work you do. I have a niece near and dear to my heart who is a travel nurse, and she travels all around the country and takes on very, very difficult jobs. And I know that this can be a very stressful profession. Eventually, I went to grad school. And during grad school is when I started studying the relationship between humor, health, and communication. And it changed the direction of my life. Along the way, I met a guy named Doug Fletcher, and he had this wonderful idea about combining nursing and humor. This was back around 1990. And at the time, really nobody had ever thought of combining those two things, at least not out loud, not in writing. And he and I and one or two other people, we pooled our resources together and we started a magazine. It was a quarterly rag that was subscription based only, called the Journal of Nursing Jocularity. And this magazine did incredibly well given the time. This was pre-internet, and we had people, subscribers, anywhere from 14 to 40,000 nurses at a time. So a lot of folks got a view of the Journal of Nursing Jocularity. So I'd be curious if any of you have ever seen a copy of the Journal of Nursing Jocularity. Type yes into the chat. Would love to see how many of you ever saw a copy of that. We heard that the average pass around rate was every magazine was seen by at least 9 nurses, because it often frequented staff rooms, break rooms. And so I'm curious to see if any of you have ever seen a copy of that. But it was written, edited, and illustrated by nurses. And so we took on the topic of entertaining nurses, a lot of dark humor, but we also took on the application of humor. How could nurses use humor for themselves and also for their patients? And that began even a more exciting part of my journey. I see here some yeses, and that's great. I'm very happy to hear that. So in terms of disasters and crises, I am a fan of The Walking Dead. I don't know if there's any other Walking Dead fans here. If you are, put that in the chat room as well. But I'm sure that if there was ever a zombie apocalypse, I would be prepared. I know what to do in case of zombies. As a matter of fact, I live now in San Diego, and every year, up until this year, for the past 15 years, we have had the pleasure of attending Comic-Con. And one year during Comic-Con, they actually had this wonderful, large display. It was the size of a small block inside, and they had a home with a picket fence and a chain link fence, and inside the chain link fence were all of these zombies, and they're walking around. These people are in studio quality makeup, and they've actually been taught by a choreographer how to walk like zombies, and they were walking around inside this compound. I was fascinated by this event, and I kept going and looking and staring at the zombies. But at one point in time, the event was closing for the day, and they asked everybody to please head to the front doors. And instead, I wanted one more look at the zombies. And so I walked back, took a look at the zombie compound, and because it was the close of the day, they had opened the gate, and the zombies were starting to walk out of the compound. And the front of my brain, it was this very curious thing, because my prefrontal cortex knew that this wasn't real, and I found it amusing. But as the zombies got closer and closer, my amygdala, my reptile part of my brain, started getting alerted, started feeling threatened, and it started saying, maybe you should get out of here. But my prefrontal cortex kept saying, no, this is cool, this is cool. But the zombie kept getting closer and closer and closer, until finally this one zombie starts to reach out and touch me, and at that point my amygdala just goes crazy. I turn to run, and there is another zombie who has snuck up behind me, and I screamed like I was a little girl. my prefrontal cortex was totally gone. This meme I found recently said, I wanted zombies and anarchy, and instead I got work from home and toilet paper shortages. Worst apocalypse ever. But the thing is that this was an amygdala hijack. And even though my prefrontal cortex was in good enough shape to reason, the amygdala overrode it. It hijacked my brain. And this is what happens when we're dealing with a crisis. And it really doesn't even matter what size the crisis is. Our brain responds in the same way, whether it's a personal crisis, like you have maybe a health problem, you've been diagnosed with cancer, maybe it's a family issue, there's something going on that affects your entire family, your organization, your community. Right now we're seeing regional crisis in terms of a hurricane along the Gulf and the eastern seaboard. National, you look at the time, particularly during 9/11 and what was happening in our country during a terrorist attack, and globally, which is what we're dealing with right now in terms of COVID. So before we get started, I want to do a little check and see how you rate in terms of your COVID crisis report card. So I'm going to show some statements, and I want you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. If you're a 1, the answer is absolutely not. This doesn't affect me at all. It's not relevant. 10 is you crushed it. So the first comment is on a daily basis. Each of these is prefaced with on a daily basis. I'm feeling meaningfully connected to the people who mean the most to me. So would you rate that as no, I'm not? That's down toward a 1, maybe sort of a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 10. You just feel totally connected to the people who are most important to you. The next question. On a daily basis, I'm patient and compassionate with the people I interact with. Scale of 1 to 10. What would you give yourself? On a daily basis, I'm feeling energized and vibrant physically, mentally, and emotionally. On a daily basis, I'm taking on challenges in stride without feeling stressed, anxious, or depressed. On a daily basis, I'm consistently making good decisions and not allowing stress to distract me or cause me to lose focus. On a daily basis, I'm feeling optimistic about how the COVID-19 crisis will affect me over the next 6 to 12 months. And last, on a daily basis, I'm having daily experiences that result in laughter and feelings of enjoyment. Okay, now this is the only part where you're going to be asked to do a little bit of math. I know you're thinking, wait a minute, I didn't know there was going to be a test. And this test is strictly for you. But if you add up your score, then we're going to look at this percentage-wise as you would if you were being graded. So if you had 63 to 70 points, man, you are crushing it right now in terms of your resilience, and you would definitely get an A. If you got somewhere between 56 and 62 points, not too bad. Actually, you're doing pretty well, give all things considered, but you still want to be making sure that you are tapping into resources on a regular basis so that you don't lose ground. 49 to 55 points, yeah, you're averaging a C. Definitely room for improvement, but you're hanging in there. And if it's 48 points or less, man, you got here just in time. And so I have some information that I hope is going to be very helpful for you. So on a scale of 1 to 9, how would you rate yourself? Put a number in the chat. In terms of these cats, the cat scale, are you totally calm, as in number 1, or would you be having number 9, a catastrophe? Give you a second to put in your number. And again, we are rewarding for participation, prizes of unspeakable value. Okay, we have some 7s, which if you're only rating a 7, I have to go back. I don't know if you mean 41 points or less. If you only rated yourself, if you rated yourself a 1 on every one, then really you are here just in time. Oh, you're a 7 on the cat scale, yes. Because many of us have had a few extra calories. Anybody say COVID-19? That would be me. I think I'm definitely a 7. Okay, so let's talk about your brain on stress. I know I was watching some of the sessions yesterday, and I know you got a little bit of brain science, but I want to speak a little bit more to this because this also will help set the frame for how you're going to use humor to your advantage. When we are in a threat state, our brains, they get hijacked. When we go into a threat state, we see this cascade of neurotransmitters. We see the increase in norepinephrine. We see the increase in adrenaline. We see the increase in cortisol. And what happens here is that this decreases our cognitive capacity. This decreases our ability to problem solve. This decreases our ability to be creative when we need it the most. It affects our ability to hear and really comprehend what we're hearing. I think that this becomes really evident when either we're being given instructions or we're giving instructions to a patient. If their brain is in a threat state, if they're scared, if they're anxious, if they're worried, you could be giving them the most detailed information, the best instructions ever, and they're going to swear later that you never said anything, that you never shared any information with them. And it's not that they're trying to be obstinate. It's not that they're trying to be non-compliant. They're not trying to be jerks. Their brains have not let them absorb this. And we don't see any release of oxytocin, which is our bonding hormone. In terms of holistically, stress affects every single body system. It affects us physiologically, it affects us psychologically, it affects us socially, it affects us even spiritually, every single body system. And here's another crazy thing with stress, we have what's called an anticipatory effect. And that means that the event doesn't even have to be happening at the moment. Just thinking about it, just anticipating it, releases the same hormones, the same chemicals, the same proteins, and enacts the same physiological, psychological, and social responses as if the event is actually happening in that moment. So why humor? Great question. There's three purposes of humor. And the one that everybody thinks about is entertainment, because we love laughing. We love being entertained. And that is a great purpose for entertainment. But another purpose for entertainment is influence. How do we use humor to persuade people, to motivate people, to inspire people, to educate people? And then the third purpose that I really want to focus on today is well-being. How do you keep yourself healthier? How do you keep yourself more resilient? How do you keep yourself not just less stressed, but actually hopeful and happy? The cool thing about humor is that it also is holistic and that it affects every single body system. It affects every part of your life. If you ever studied Adler's The Whole Person, we find that humor affects all of our lives. If you apply humor, you connect humor to your work. Business people can create profitability. If you connect humor to your career, you can create success. If you connect humor to health, you can create wellness. If you connect it to education, you can create wisdom. If you connect it to service, you can create significance. If you connect it to relationships, now you can create connections and even intimacy. This is a way cool thing if you are working with your family and your significant other, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend. Humor can create intimacy. And if you connect humor to spirituality, you can even create joy. So let's look for a second about your brain on humor. Science shows that humor is a whole brain activity. The prefrontal cortex processes what we call wit. Wit is the processing of, is it funny? Is it not funny? It's your thinking about it. The emotional part of your brain, the limbic system, is where we experience the feeling of humor or mirth. And the occipital part of our brain is where we create laughter, the physiological expression of humor. And when we experience humor, we get this release, we get this cascade of neurotransmitters. There's a bit link on this slide, and also Rachel is going to put a link in the chat box where you can see my TEDx talk, because I go into more detail about the effect of humor on the brain, how it releases this cascade of neurotransmitters, and how it decreases the epinephrine, it decreases the adrenaline, it decreases the cortisol, it increases the release of dopamine, which feels good. It increases the release of oxytocin, which helps us feel connected to others. One of the parts of our brain that also helps us deal with humor is called mirror neurons. And I don't think that you're going to be able to hear this, but there is another link that Rachel's going to share, and I'm just going to see if. So I'm not sure whether or not you could hear that. But even just seeing the baby's laugh is absolutely hysterical, because our brains see that look, that sees that laughter, and it triggers that in us as well. So just seeing a smile, just seeing a laugh can trigger that in yourself. And this is helpful to know when you're trying to help other people as well, that by smiling, by laughing, you can actually evoke that in others. And this can travel across a room. It can travel across a department like a wave. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where someone begins to laugh and people don't even know why they're laughing, but pretty soon the next person laughs, and the next person laughs, and the next person laughs. And before you know it, you have all these people laughing and they don't even know why. This particular slide, I'm going to ask Rachel to put the link for this in. It's called Contagious Laughter. And we're not able to show the YouTube links on StreamYard, but this shows what happens in your musculoskeletal system. This gentleman hits a ball, and in the process, because of a mistake he makes, everybody starts laughing, and they become so engrossed in laughter that they lose control of their muscles. These people are falling on the ground. They're pounding the ground and just laughing uncontrollably. And there's probably been a time where someone has told you a joke where you had to lean onto a chair, lean onto a desk, because your stomach muscles became weak with laughter. The truth is that your muscles all over your body become weak with laughter. The way it happens is that your muscles go through a stimulation phase and then a relaxation phase. And we tend to notice it more in our stomach muscles, but it's all over our body, which is why our knees get weak and why we double over with laughter. And some people have found that if they laugh too hard, it becomes detrimental. I remember my favorite evaluation that I ever got from someone at a nursing conference was when the nurse wrote on her evaluation, "You made me laugh so hard, tears ran down my leg." That can be an issue. So let's take a quick brain break here. I want you to type in the chat 3 things from the store that begin with the letter of your last name. 3 things from the store that begin with the letter of your last name. So for me, it would be bacon, Brussels sprouts, and booze. 3 things that begin with the letter of your last name. All right, I'm checking the chat here. What do we got? All right. We have crackers, cookies, and Coke, apples, alcohol, air freshener. All right, think about these things. This is a brain break. What we're doing is actually stepping into the next part of this, and that is there's 3 ways that our brains can benefit from humor: distract, reframe, and refuel. You know, I read a lot of books, and one of my favorite books of all time is a book by a Holocaust survivor, Viktor Frankl. And he was in the Holocaust. He withstood and survived horrible, horrible conditions while many around him died. And when he came out, he wrote the most profound things and was able to show us how you can find hope and even humor under horrible, horrible conditions. This was one of the quotes from his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He said, "It's well known that humor, more than anything else in the human makeup, can afford an aloofness and an ability to rise above any situation, even if only for a few seconds." So when we're experiencing humor, our brains have this wonderful opportunity to be distracted. And when we're distracted, we're giving the amygdala hijack a break. We are regaining that cognitive capacity. And some people think that maybe distraction isn't a good thing, it's burying your hand. But when you are not able to have control of the situation and you find the situation is causing you stress, then the next best thing to do is to distract yourself with humor. It might be games, it might be memories, it might be other people, but to distract yourself with humor. So here's an example of a game or an exercise that we've done in the past that's just a bit of a distraction game. You can take this back to your unit and you take the title of a movie and replace one word of the movie title with the phrase toilet paper. So for example, Lord of the Rings would be Lord of the Toilet Paper. Fried green tomatoes would be fried green toilet paper. So put your suggestions in the chat. All right, we're seeing some more here. Steel toilet paper instead of steel magnolias. That's a good one. What's another one? Harry toilet paper instead of Harry Potter. Okay, that's a good one. Dirty toilet paper. Clint Eastwood fan. Awesome. I did this on a Facebook page. It took off. We had hundreds of answers and people used it just for a little bit of distraction. Give your brain a little bit of a break. Lower your cortisol. Unhijack the amygdala so that you get an opportunity again to tap into that prefrontal cortex. Because we know as nurses, when we allow our amygdala to get hijacked, we're not making the best decisions we could. And when we have these kinds of situations, our patients are at stake and we put ourselves more at stake. What are your humor distractions? Think about those and how you can increase the odds of experiencing more humor in your day. Another opportunity to use humor to help your brain is to use humor to reframe. Reframing is looking at things from a different perspective. And this actually takes quite a bit of cognitive capacity. It takes a lot of energy from your brains. Our brains don't like to do that. However, humor is a shortcut and it allows us to reframe things more easily. It takes unlike ideas and pairs them together, puts them in a different perspective. And the interesting thing is that when we can do this, when we can play with our pain, now we have power over it. If you play with your pain, you have power over the object or the person or the situation that would otherwise oppress you. Here's a meme. An optimist is someone who figures out that taking a step backward after taking a step forward isn't a disaster, it's a cha-cha. So that is an example of reframing. Here's another one. 4 stages of quarantine. This is one of the typical memes going around right now, but you look at this and we see that this one covers poking fun at masks. It covers poking fun at our horrible hair days that we're having now. It's poking fun at weight gain. So by poking fun of these situations, we're able to get some distraction. We're able to get a little bit of relief. Another example of humor that was reframing, another meme that I found. Back in my day, there was so much toilet paper, people used to literally string it up in the trees of their enemies. Back in the day, that was called TPing. Here's one I found on a nursing page. Be a nurse, they said. It'll be fun, they said. Again, by being able to laugh at the situation, now we get hope, now we get victory by being able to twist and turn and play with our pain. I think that this one is maybe the most important of all, though, and that is to refuel. Because in this particular situation that we're in now, we didn't realize just how long that this would be going on. I think that for some of us, we thought maybe it would be going on for a few months, maybe a little bit longer, but I don't think anyone in the beginning foresaw that this would be going on throughout the year of 2020. And now even, what are we looking at in the year of 2021? We really don't know. And when we have long-term stress, this is pulling from our reserves. It's like having a bank account or a charge card and then taking it out and buying something you need, and then buying something else you need, and then buying something you want, and then buying something else you need, and you've hit your limit, but you don't stop hitting the charge card. Now, pretty soon, the bank is going to get real unhappy with you. And at first, they're going to slap your wrist, but eventually, they're going to yank the card. And this is very similar to what can happen when you continually pull from your reserves, pull from your reserves, pull from your reserves. We're seeing nurses who are getting not only tired and fatigued, but they're getting stressed, they're getting depressed. There's even nurses who are having suicidal thoughts. Their immune systems are getting kicked out from underneath them, and they're getting sick, whether it's with COVID or other diseases. And some who are also experiencing things like chronic stress, acute stress, and even PTSD. So we need to be able to learn how to use humor to refuel. And so with this, a lot of this is about consistency, because when we're using humor consistently over time, we're building up the reserves, and our brain does things that helps us in the long term be healthier. One of the positive things about humor is our immune system, and we can actually build up our immune system over time. One of the benefits of practicing humor consistently is that it affects immunoglobulin A. And immunoglobulin A is an immunoglobulin that is particularly helpful for respiratory illnesses. And also by decreasing the cortisol, you are decreasing your risk for other kinds of illnesses. My friend Paul Osenkup says that humor is a habit, not a talent. A lot of people think, oh, you either have a sense of humor or you don't. But no, this is something that you can develop over time. Tapping into things that make you feel good. If you haven't been on YouTube and found SGN, check into this. Some good news. On a weekly basis, we are experiencing the positive benefits and the positive things that are going on in our world. And our brains are built to protect us. And so they're constantly seeking out threat. And so we may even see more threat than is actually, shall we say, realistic in your world. You want to not go overboard with threat. You need to tamper that with the opposite, with good news and with positive things. So by looking for things like this, some good news is a good resource. This is another funny video that I'm wanting you to look at afterwards. Rachel will put in the link to this because we're not able to show the video on Stream Share and share it. But this is a hysterical little video. And again, by watching things like this on a daily basis, what we find is that we're building up those reserves. So typing in and Googling things on YouTube that are fun for you, that are funny for you, that make you laugh, that make you smile, seeking humor from your friends, having an accountability partner, somebody that you can share humor with on a daily basis. One of my friends who suffers from depression, when she's feeling down, all she puts on her Facebook page is just, I need some humor. And everybody knows that that's a signal that she's feeling down, and we just all send lots and lots of funny things. Don't be afraid to ask for help from your friends. And that's another benefit of humor, is that because of the oxytocin, we actually do have the experience of feeling bonded with other people. And Victor Borges said it very well. He said that laughter is the shortest distance between two people. And there are lots of ways now that we can relate because of technology, even when we're isolated. I don't know anybody who hasn't been on a Zoom meeting, and that's one way that you can connect and share with other people. We had a friend a few weeks ago who had a birthday party, and he asked that everybody who come to his Zoom birthday party bring one joke. And it made everybody feel so connected and feel so good. But there's now other kinds of resources, like Netflix has an extension called netflixparty.com, where you can share your Netflix screen with other friends and family. There's another piece of technology, an extension on the internet called 27. It's spelled out TWOSEVEN, 27.com, where you're also able to share things like movies and stuff. There's games and even puzzles and all sorts of interactive things that you can do with other people to relate humor-wise. And we know that not only does stress isolate us, but severe isolation in itself can be harmful. People who are severely isolated experience the same types of cortisol and physical stress and threat as somebody who smokes up to 18 cigarettes a day. And so social isolation is not something that we should downplay. Find the different ways that you can connect with your friends and with other people. Don't be afraid to be silly. Some people are like, oh, I don't want to be silly. It's not professional. But silly it used to be a blessing. To be silly was to be healthy, happy, and prosperous. And so I actually wish you more silliness. One of the ways to do this is to practice seeing funny. And by seeing funny, here's what we do. We look for the humor around us. Our brains may think that we don't have any humor available, but we do. You'll find it if you look for it. If you say to yourself, there's nothing funny, then that's what you're going to find. Your reticular activating system in your brain won't provide you any humor. But if you tell your brain you want humor, you'll start finding it. This was a meme. Somebody told the barista, my name is Mark with a C. Okay, he got Kark. This is actually a gym in San Diego where you can ride up the escalators rather than take the stairs, so that you can so you can get on the Stairmaster that you pay for. This was a sign in Chicago. There were no bars around, but we still found a sign that said absolutely no alcohol beyond this point, so start chugging. If you start looking for the humor, you'll find it. I don't even know what this means, but there is a sign in mid-California. Allison Sheely took a picture of this, cows falling from the sky. Another thing that you can do is to stack the deck. What can you do to put humor in a way that your brain doesn't have to work for it, that it comes easily for you? Tapping into funny memories, tapping into funny thoughts. You never have to go any further than your brain. All I need to do is think about pleasant experiences with this little guy, and I immediately experience this cascade of positive neurotransmitters. So have a series of positive memories that you can tap into. Have accountability partners. Surround yourself with people who make you smile and laugh, not the people who suck up all the good air when they come into a room. There's two kinds of people: those who bring joy when they enter a room, and those who bring joy when they leave it. Make sure you're surrounding yourself with people who bring you joy. And last is to be a student of humor. It's not enough to just know this is important. You need to apply it. And this is a growing science. There's lots of resources. One of my favorite resources is a nonprofit organization, the Association for Applied and Therapeutic Humor. They have conferences, they have a Facebook page, they have lots of presences that you can find humor on. I have other kinds of social media pages that you can find humor on Facebook. We have a tribute to Journal of Nursing Jocularity. We also have other kinds of Facebook pages. There is a high performance humor Facebook page, which is a closed group, but if you want to be part of that group, if you apply and fill out the application, just 3 simple questions, you can be part of that group. There's funny groups on Twitter. There's funny educational pieces on all of these kinds of resources on YouTube that are free. In my book, What's So Funny About Nursing, there's a lot of humor in this, and there's also serious ways that you can apply humor for yourself and for your colleagues and for your patients. And I know that at the end, Steve and Rachel are going to be giving away some copies of What's So Funny About Nursing. If you go to humorfornurses.com, there's going to be some prizes of unspeakable value. I have an infographic on how you can use humor for yourself and for others during COVID and during other types of crisis. I also have some additional things that I would email you afterwards, and an ongoing series of things that on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, just ongoing resources for people who really want to understand how they can use more humor. And for those who really want to get serious and take a deep dive, take a look at highperformancehumormastery.com. This is a monthly class that I do on the last Saturday of every month for people who actually want to take a deep dive into the application of humor. All right, last but not least, lighten up. Don't take yourself too seriously. You know, if you surround yourself with other people, laugh, see the humor in the moment. Don't take yourself so seriously. We can take our work seriously, but take ourselves lightly. Another meme that I found, the show is boring. Again, this is a Zoom conference. Don't take these things too seriously. Another pro tip from Molly. Pro tip for couples suddenly working from home together. Get yourselves an imaginary coworker to blame things on. In our apartment, Cheryl keeps leaving her dirty cups all over the place, and we really don't know what to do about her. Joke, kid, tease, do this, and not take the situation so seriously. Take your work seriously, but not yourself. I don't want to brag, but this is like the 5th end of the world that I've survived. We will get through this. We will get through this. But humor is no longer a nicety. It's a necessity. Choose humor. Again, going back to Viktor Frankl, he said, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our happiness. Again, put something in that space. Choose humor. And thank you for your service. Ta-da. All right, Steve, Rachel, let's go for it. Giving away prizes of unspeakable value.
All right.
All right.
Karyn, thank you so much for that. That was absolutely fantastic. And I think given where we are in the world today, it's humor is needed now more than ever. And you just illustrated why it's so important, particularly from the nursing perspective. I was just curious, as Rachel is spinning the magic wheel of comments and going to come up with some winners for your book. I just want to ask you, as you experience in your career, particularly too, I know you were practicing nurse early on. Can you give an example or an anecdote about how humor in nursing may have turned a situation around relative to patient care? Sometimes obviously you have people in very dire circumstances, but sometimes it's just a laugh or a giggle that will help turn the situation or the day around. In your nursing history, can you discuss or give an example of something where you used that you can talk about here?
Yeah, I was going to say, there's
you use
a lot of dark humor, and actually, it's a longer story. I will ask the viewers to go to YouTube and watch the student catheterization story, because that is also a very funny story, and it's one on how I used humor to reframe pain with somebody who was bullying me. So student nurse catheterization story. But there was a nurse whom I was working with, and we went into a room, and when we walked in, the patient, they'd been stressed, they were in pain, they were just suffering, and they were cranky, and this is something that we understand. But when we walked in, it was me and Patty, and the patient pointed at her tray and she said, "This is a bad potato. It's a bad potato." And Patty picks up the potato, looks at it, and she goes, "You are bad." And she turns it over and she starts spanking the potato. And at first, the patient looked like, "Have you guys lost your minds?" But then she started laughing, and we were all able to reframe the situation. And it just momentarily relieved the tension and allow us to take a breath and say, okay, yes, people are kind of tense, kind of upset. Let's laugh and take the next step. Because when we're in a situation like that, we're not laughing at the patient, we're laughing at the situation. And that allows us to better serve their needs.
Well, I know in our, as Rachel can attest to, because she essentially manages our community, but in our Gypsy Nurse Facebook network group, which is our main discussion group, we've got over 115,000 members at this point. Humor is often a topic, and we have a lot of anecdotal stories that obviously patient privacy is respected, but we have a lot of anecdotal stories. We'll have some funny memes and so forth, and some of them are just, laugh out loud funny.
Yeah.
And I guess it's one of those things where you either laugh or you cry. So let's choose to laugh. But I know that Rachel can attest to this. But as we go through it, and we have moderators that are watching the group and so forth, there's just some extremely funny anecdotes and memes and so forth about nursing that it just, to your point, really helps people, I think, put things in perspective and helps them get through the day. Because it's I'm not a nurse, but I can imagine working around the nursing community for many years. If you don't put things in perspective and have some sense of humor, it's got to be awfully tough to get through the day, particularly the really tough times that I know nurses experience.
And it was interesting when I was doing research for this. I was looking specifically for COVID nursing humor. And I know that there's probably some behind closed doors, but also a lot of our humor comes from pain and discomfort, which is why a lot of our humor in nursing revolves around body fluids, death, and dismemberment. However, we have to be able to experience some emotional distance. And, for many, it's too soon right now. We're still in the depths of this crisis. And there's certain things that we have emotional distance that we can laugh about, toilet paper shortage. That's not a big anxiety or stressor for us. We can laugh about that. And there's other things that, people are still making jokes about charting, and they're still making jokes about meds and cranky patients and cranky doctors. But, the humor for COVID, still maybe too soon for many. And so I'm not saying that you have to joke about COVID. What we're saying is leverage the humor that's already around you so that you can survive this and get through this and be healthier and happier. And maybe later we can laugh about this.
Let's hope so. Speaking of COVID, I know that you've obviously as part of what you've done over the years, you do a lot of speaking engagements and live events. And I know, having met you several times over the years, you're a very person-to-person and in-person, type of speaker. Just how has this pandemic affected you and what you do, and what adjustments have you made? Obviously, you're doing this remotely, but how has this affected your your profession at this point in terms of professional speaking engagements and audience entertainment?
Well, obviously, it's really hammered the speaking profession. And, so far, all of my 2020 engagements in terms of physically being together are off the table. We have done some now that are virtual. And I'll say that as a speaker, I love the fact that I can still share information, but humor is a lot harder in terms of virtual, because when we're using humor, we're picking up verbal cues, we're picking up visual cues. And in a situation like this, you're talking to your screen, and so it's rather bizarre to do something like that. I've grown into an area that I always said I was going to do more of, and never did get around to it. So the universe said, "Well, here's some time for you," and so developed an online. I've developed online training. I've got my monthly teaching program now for people, and doing some coaching for people. And so these are other areas of my life that I'm growing. And we are seeing that there are going to be some events, hopefully, after, mostly post-vaccine. But the contracts that I'm working with now are, in our upcoming event, we want you to agree to speak either on site or virtually, because we don't know what it's going to be. So interesting times.
Certainly are. Well, again, Karyn, as we wrap up here, we can't thank you enough for taking time out to have this session for the benefit of our community. I think it was a really pertinent topic, and one that probably hits home with a lot of the audience. And you've given some excellent information here. I hope to be able to do this again with you, maybe at some point over the next few months, maybe a holiday show with Karyn or something like that. And hopefully things are a little bit better by that time. And then as we wrap up, if you could just feel free to do a shameless plug. How can people learn more about your books and you as a person and your speaking engagements and all those sorts of things? Feel free to do a shameless plug.
Well, thank you. I'm pretty much everywhere. So if you look for me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, would love to connect with you there. On my title slide, I had Humor for Nurses. And if you go to humorfornurses.com, that's where you can download the infographic and also some other prizes of unspeakable value. Would love to serve you there and be in touch with you on a semi-regular basis so that you can continue to learn. The Humor Monthly Mastery is something that High Performance Humor Monthly Mastery is something that I'm very, very excited about. And I'll have Rachel put a link in for that as well, but that was on one of the slides. And, when in doubt, just go to KarynBuxman.com and you'll find me there.
Very good. Very good. Well, again, Karyn, thank you so much. We will be in touch. We would love to have you back. If you're willing to join us, we would love to have you
that'd
back
be great.
And do it again sometime. And then I think, Rachel, you have selected 3 winners for Karyn's book, What's So Funny About Nursing? A Creative Approach to Celebrating Your Profession. So why don't you tell us who won the copies of the book? 3 copies.
All right. It was Tammy, Katya, and Amber. So just message our fan page and we will get everything set up for you. If you're going to be watching later, feel free to comment as well. I'll send all the comments to Karyn so that way she can answer any questions as well. So it doesn't end here.
I would love to have questions.
Definitely comment later on. So we thank you so much, Karyn, and we thank Travel Nurse Across America for sponsoring this event and all week long. So, all right, well, stay funny, everybody. Make sure you get some laughs in today.
Good for you, Rachel. Good for you.
See funny.
Thank you.
We'll do the wave.
Bye.
Bye-bye.